Hello everyone, Lazy Titan here. Today I'm coming at you with a video that's going to go over the gold Team Affinity cards. I've seen several tier lists that involve the diamond Team Affinity cards, but I just wanted to go ahead and make one for the golds, as you're going to go ahead and get them anyway, and I figured why not go over the golds, as some of them are actually quite useful. So with that being said, let's get started here with Rafael Palmeiro, and these are in the orders of the division, so it'll be AL East, AL Central, AL West on the tier list. So starting off here with Rafael Palmeiro. The good thing about the Rafael Palmeiro card is that he has good contact versus righties, good vision, good discipline. Now, where this card does suffer is versus lefties, as he is a left-handed batter. And also, this card is not very good at fielding, so you will have to keep him at first base or DH him. And he's also not very good on the base paths. So with that in mind, I'm actually going to start Palmeiro down here in the C tier, because he is really only good versus righties, and he doesn't offer much value outside of that. So next up on the list is Verdugo, Alex Verdugo. So the good thing about this Verdugo card is that he does have good contact versus both sides. He has decent vision, and he's also has decent power versus righties, but not very good versus lefties. Now, the one thing this card does have, though, is very good defense. Very good reaction, very good arm strength, very good arm accuracy, and 60 speed. So he would be a very good, start of the game outfielder in right or left field. So that's where I'm going to put Alex Verdugo in the A tier. And that's not just me being a biased Red Sox fan, because he's a Yankee now. Speaking of Yankees, the next card on their list is Ben Rice, who is a first baseman with a secondary position of catcher. So that is to his benefit. So the good thing about this Ben Rice card is that he has very good power versus both sides, pretty good contact versus righties, not so good versus lefties. Now, where this card does have a downfall is definitely in the vision and the clutch. The clutch is only 50, so he's actually going to be worse versus both sides than his base stats when he's up with runners on base. He has decent fielding and decent block, so he can actually be a decent catcher if you're looking for a catcher that's, has very high power both sides. So with that in mind, I'm going to place Ben Rice here. I'm going to put him into the B tier. And this is using the new Show Zone tier list, so there are some bugs. There we go. So next up is another catcher, Travis d'Arnaud, who also has a secondary position of first base. So the very good thing about this d'Arnaud is that he is excellent versus lefties. 90 contact left, 110 contact left. He also has a base 103 clutch. So he's very good against both sides with runners on. He's also got fairly decent fielding and block for a catcher. Speed, base running is not really something you look at for a catcher. So with that being said, I think I'm going to put Travis d'Arnaud into the A tier, because he is a good bat to have when in any situation, whether you need just a pinch batter off the bench. And moving on past that, we're going to go here to Nate Pearson. Now, the starting pitchers are not very good as golds. They didn't give us very many good gold starting pitchers in the game in general, but definitely these Team Affinity ones are not very good. So this Nate Pearson does have good hits per nine and good pitching clutch and decent velo, but he only has a 4-pitch mix, and none of these pitches really tunnel with each other. And he doesn't have the velo or the pitch mix to really do anything very good. So with that being said, I'm going to move Nate Pearson into the D tier. He is actually not the worst pitcher we're going to see here, because I know there's another one coming up here in a minute that's going to be worse. So Yoan Moncada, this is a switch-hitting third baseman with good contact versus lefties and power versus lefties. Not so good versus righties, but he does have good clutch. So that's in his favor. And he has a decent reaction time for a third baseman and decent speed for third base. So with that being said, I am going to put Yoan Moncada into the A tier, as he is a decent bat and he is a switch hitter. So that's definitely to his benefit. And speaking of something that's not to your benefit, Tristan McKenzie has decent hits per nine, excellent break, but he is a 3-pitch pitcher, 4-seam slider, 12-6 curve. There's not much to say here. He is an F tier card. Moving on now to Nick Castellanos, who, like every year, is excellent versus lefties and not very good against righties. Now, the one downside to this Castellanos card, he has 57 clutch. So if it is a situation where you're bringing in a pinch hitter, you need to make sure there's no runners on. So he's not going to be good in like extra innings or something like that if there's a runner on base. But if it's, the first at bat and you want to take him out and replace your right fielder, left fielder, or DH with him, he is excellent in those situations. So with that in mind, I'm going to put Nick Castellanos in the A tier when there is no runners on. If there are runners on, he is probably like a C tier card. Next up, we have Alex Gordon, who is somewhat similar to Castellanos, but from the opposite side, he is more of a righty killer. Now, this card also does have better vision than Castellanos, but he does run into the same issue of not very good clutch. He is also not a particularly good fielder out there, but he is playing third base, so you can kind of deal with that. And so with that said, I'm going to put Alex Gordon into the B tier. Moving on here to Brooks Lee. So Brooks Lee is a third baseman with secondaries of second base and shortstop. He is good versus lefties in terms of contact. He has decent power, good clutch, decent fielding stats, but overall he's kind of a balanced card. So he's going to go into the B tier. Next up on the list is J.R. Richard, who is the Astros Team Affinity Gold. So the good thing about J.R. Richard is he does throw decently hard. He doesn't have outlier, but he does have 4-seam, slider, cutter, and a 2-seam. So he does throw 2 fastballs, but at least he has a cutter and slider. So the good thing about this card as well is that he has good home runs per 9, good hits per 9, and decent Ks per 9. The control is going to struggle, though. So that's the big struggle here with the J.R. Richard card. But I think you could actually maybe make him work on the higher difficulties. So I'm actually going to say he is a B tier pitcher. Up next is Nolan Schanuel, my apologies. He is a first baseman. He has good contact versus both sides, not very good power, but good vision, very good vision, 93 vision and 88 clutch for where we are in the year. Fielding, not particularly good, but he is a first baseman, so that's not something you particularly have to worry about at first base. So with that being said, I'm going to put Nolan Schanuel into the B tier. Moving on here to Zach Gelof. This card is good versus righties, but not very good clutch and not very good vision. He does have good arm accuracy and is a decent fielder, though that reaction at second base may not be good enough. He is good in case of being a pinch runner, though. So if you're looking for a pinch runner to have on your bench, Zach Gelof could be the guy. So Zach Gelof is going to go into the A tier for the sole purpose that he is a good pinch runner and good versus righties. Moving on now to Edgar Martinez. So this Edgar card is actually very balanced in my opinion. He's got good contact versus lefties, not bad versus righties, decent power versus lefties, and decent power versus both sides. He's got good vision. The clutch is the one downfall of this card. It's actually lower than the 2 base stats. So with runners in your scoring position, you will have less contact than you normally would. So I would say that Edgar is a decent card. He's kind of a balance, so I think he's a B tier, like a lot of these cards are. He's usable, but is not the best. So moving on now to Evan Carter, who is a left fielder, center fielder, right fielder. And all these cards obviously can play DH, even the pitchers if you wanted to, for whatever reason. But in terms of this card, he is very good versus righties, not very good versus lefties. The clutch is decent for the fact that if you're facing a lefty, it will be higher. You will have higher contact in base, but versus righties, it is lower. He is an okay fielder. The speed will probably make up for that, 95 speed, but he doesn't have very good steal, so I wouldn't try to steal with him. But he is overall a decent card, I would say. And so I will put him into the B tier. Up next, Warren Spahn. So this is an interesting card that I was looking at earlier. So he has good stamina, so he can go pretty long, and he's also got good control and decent velo and decent walks per nine. Now, the hits and Ks per nine, they're not very good. So your PCI is going to be pretty large. But the one thing with this card is it does have four-seam, curveball, screwball, sinker, palm ball. So there is quite a big velo difference. So I think if you're on a higher difficulty, this card may actually be decent, because if you can locate with that 91 walks per nine, I think this velo difference and the overall pitch mix could cause some people some issues. I don't think he would go very long in games, and obviously with that hits per nine and Ks per nine, he's not going to be, amazing. But I'm going to say he's probably good enough as a pitcher to be in the B tier. Not on the low difficulty. So if you're on a lower difficulty, I would say he's down here in like the D tier, just because of how slow his stuff is. Moving up next, we have Michael Lowell. So the good thing about Michael Lowell here is he has good vision. He has good contact versus righties. And that's really about it. Unfortunately, this card is just not very good. If you like his swing, you can obviously use him. But overall, for me, I'm going to put him in the C tier. So moving on next is Mike Piazza. The Mikes back-to-back, Lowell and Piazza. So Mike Piazza can play catcher and first base. And this Piazza card is decent versus righties. Has pretty good vision and decent clutch. And has good fielding, but he is a catcher. So arm strength and arm accuracy and block are the only things that really matter. Now, the only thing with Piazza is I know a lot of people do not like his swing. So that is something to consider. But overall, I think this card is, middle of the road. So I would say it's a B tier card. Next, we have Rhys Hoskins. So Rhys Hoskins has sort of inverse splits. His contact versus lefties is not as high as his power, but his contact righties is lower, but his power versus righties is higher. But he does have very good clutch. He has 100 clutch. So with runners in scoring position, he would be 100 out for contact, and he would be 80 power left, 91 power right. So that's very good and that is as a righty. So he's going to hit very well against both sides. Not very good speed or fielding, but he is a first baseman. So I would not expect that from him. So I'm going to put Rhys Hoskins into the A tier. He may actually be I'm going to actually put him in the S tier. I think he is the first S tier of these cards. And I may go back at the end here and reorder these some. Up next, we have Pedro Martinez. So this Pedro does not have outlier. So he has just a four-seam circle change cutter, slider, and curveball. So it's a decent pitch mix, but he doesn't really bring anything. The control is not very good. The Ks and hits per nine are decent for what he is, but there's nothing really that stands out about this card. So I'm actually going to put Pedro in the C tier. He's just a normal gold pitcher, in my opinion. Up next, we have Billy Williams. So this is the Cubs Team Affinity Gold. So Billy Williams has good contact versus both sides and good clutch at 98, so it'll be higher than both base stats for contact left and right. He does have good vision, so you'll be able to foul off quite a few balls. The power versus righties is decent. The power versus lefties is not there. Not a great fielder, and he is very slow, so you probably have to use him as a DH. And because of that, I don't think you could put him in the field. He's a DH, so I'm going to say he's a C tier card just because he cannot field in any way, shape, or form, and he's really just a bat. And not as good as the other designated like Castellanos or Alex Gordon versus their one sides. So up next is Ken Griffey Jr., who is center field only or DH. So this card is good versus righties, decent versus lefties, good clutch, 90 clutch. So you'll get a boost to your contacts on both sides from the clutch with runners in scoring position. But with 66 reaction and 50 speed, this card cannot play center field. This is a DH only card. You cannot have this card in center field. So because of that, he is going to be this Ken Griffey Jr., and it's hard to believe his cards are usually so good, is going to go into the C tier. Up next, we have Mike Cameron. And so Mike Cameron is good versus lefties, decent versus righties. The clutch brings him down some, and the vision is not good. Again, he's another guy that's only in center field. He has better reaction and better speed than Ken Griffey Jr., so I think he'll play better in terms of being a fielder. but the hitting stats and the clutch just are not there. So Mike Cameron is also going to be a C tier card. Up next, we have Roberto Clemente. So as most all Roberto Clemente cards, contact is excellent, especially versus lefties. The clutch is also good at 90, 97 vision. Obviously, he doesn't have much power, but that's just the way these Roberto Clemente cards are. Good fielder, but the speed is really what's going to kill him out there in right field. So I'd say he's probably got to be either third baseman or probably just your DH. Because even 55 speed, I don't know with that 76 reaction if that can be good for a outfielder. He may be able to play decent at second base, but I would say third base or DH is where I would probably keep him. So I'm going to put him in the B tier just because of how good his contact is and the fact that he's a decent fielder. Up next, we have Carlos Beltran. Not the 99, but he is a switch hitter. Same as the other one. Good versus righties in terms of contact. Excellent clutch, 115 clutch. So if you're looking for somebody to put on your bench for when there's a runner in scoring position and your hitter you have up is not very good, this card right here can be very good because it'll have 115 contact versus both sides, and 66 and 67 power is not bad. Now, this card is not a very good fielder, 42 speed only, so this card, you want a DH. This is not a card you want to play in defense in the outfield. So, with that said, I'm going to put him into the A tier just because as a pinch runner, or as a pinch hitter, I think he could do excellent work for you. Next up is the Diamondbacks' Sean Green. He has good contact versus right and good vision, but he's not a very good fielder, and he only plays right field, center field. So I don't think this card would ever make it on a team just because the clutch is the clutch is pretty poor at 58. So this card to me is a C tier. All right, coming to the end here, 4 left. So with Nolan Jones, this is the Rockies Team Affinity Gold. He has good clutch at 109 and decent power versus both sides, so he could be good for a pinch hitter, especially against righties, as he is a lefty bat. The speed and the reaction time are very poor, so he is not going to be able to make it as a left fielder. I'd probably put him at first or third base, particularly third because of the good arm accuracy and arm strength. In case somebody puts a bunt down, you can go up there and get it and throw it real hard and fast. So I think Nolan Jones is a decent card, so I'm going to put him here in the B tier. Up next, we have Eddie Murray, the Dodgers Team Affinity Gold. Good contact versus right, good vision, decent power versus right, but the clutch is not there. Not very good reaction speed, but he is a first baseman, so I think this card is just kind of it's a C tier card. There's nothing really to add to that. He's just kind of a normal gold. Up next, we have Tony Gwynn. As all Tony Gwynn cards, excellent contact, good clutch, good vision. So those are the stats that really stand out to me for Tony Gwynn. The power's not there, but that's how all Tony Gwynn cards are. 80 speed, so decent speed. 65 reaction is not particularly good, but the speed probably make up for that, and decent arm strength. So I think he would play good in the either right field or left field. And he is a lefty bat, so he's all right. He's pretty good. I'd say he's an A tier card, similar to Clemente. But I think he's a little better than Clemente in my opinion. And last here is Willie McCovey. So Willie McCovey has good vision, good power versus right, and decent power versus left, and good contact versus righties, but not very good versus lefties. The vision's pretty good at 85. The clutch is not so good. You don't want to have him out in the field. He's going to be a first baseman. That's the only position I would ever expect to play him out on the field. But, I mean, overall, I'd say he's a decent card. He's a B. And so now that I got these all ranked here, I want to look through them real quick and see if there's any that I'm kind of think should be higher. Let's see. I think Rhys Hoskins really just kind of stands out above the rest of these guys. I mean, I think Carlos Beltran's actually an S tier card just because of the clutch as a pinch hitter. I think he could be good as a pinch hitter for like a no money spent team. These other cards all have a slight downside to them. That either they don't have good clutch, but they're better than the rest here. I'm going to move Ben Rice up just because I think his power makes him play better. than some of these other cards down here in the B tier. Any of these other cards I really want to move? I don't think so. Yep. So these are the two that I would just stay away from. You'll get them because you're grinding the Team Affinity, but Tristan McKenzie and Nate Pearson are not gonna be of any use to you. But overall, I'm happy with that. I'm gonna save this tier list to my account. Team Affinity Golds. Save that. We'll take a look at it here as a whole. And so this is the overall team, I would say. So Beltran and Hoskins, I think, are the two best overall golds from the Team Affinity release. And then the rest are just quite a few A's, a lot of B's, some C's, and a D and an F. So overall, I hope you all liked the video. If you could leave me a like and subscribe, that would be great. And leave a response down in the comments if you think I got any of these wrong or if you agree with what I said. So with that being said, this is Lazy Titan, and I'll see you real soon.